Matt Campbell is already changing Penn State's approach when it comes to recruiting.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State football. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions a part of your day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. It's been a while, and that's a disservice on my part because Jason Lord, when it comes to local high school football and everything, and Penn State football, he's been covering Penn State football for the local radio stations for a long time. He's been covering state high football for 20 years. Jason Lord is back on the show to talk about the overall trajectory of Penn State, Matt Campbell, the vision. We're going to get his thoughts there. D'Antae Sheffey and Hunter Albright, why these two players, these two prospects are important for the Nittany Lions and how Penn State immediately prioritized them. Their connection, they're Central Pennsylvania. They're some of the best players that are out of the Central Pennsylvania area. And that's what Matt Campbell is doing. He has shifted the focus now. Yes, they're still going to recruit Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, branch out, New Jersey, Ohio, right? And it's going to be a nationalized recruitment. But Jason, I think this is a big deal that Matt Campbell and the staff are trying to get what they are trying to do what they can to get as many Central Pennsylvania stars back up to Happy Valley.
Yeah, this is the year to do it too, I think. They're trying to fill their roster, number one, because you take the job so late in the game, obviously, and you have to go through the portal as much as Coach Campbell had to do. Brought a lot of his own players, certainly, but yeah, it's a great thing to do with coming back, bringing local guys in, and seeing what they can do. Obviously, these guys aren't necessarily going to be starters or even second and third on the depth chart in a lot of ways. So
immediately, anyway.
Yeah, not immediately. Yeah, not immediately at all. But they're going to have the chance to have a spot in the roster. They're going to have the chance to work their way up. So I like the move that he's doing, and I like that you're bringing the local players. You're bringing that familiarity in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's a combination of a couple things. One, keeping that local talent local. Number one. Number two, the obvious, you're filling your roster because you had to go through the portal as much as you did, and you're bringing guys in that can try to earn spots on the roster.
And we don't know exactly how it's going to work out at the end of the day. We'll talk about D'Antae Sheffey and Hunter Albright as prospects. Sheffey from State High, so you watched him up close and personal when you were covering those games, and Hunter Albright being over at Hollidaysburg, and there was that crossover between State College and Hollidaysburg in various different games. And I've covered Hollidaysburg on some select broadcasts and got to see both Sheffey and Hunter Albright when covering those teams selectively, not to the same extent that you did, Jason, of course. But I think about the players that, okay, their future is undetermined, but you want guys that are committed to Penn State and want to be there for the sake of being Penn State. I got that impression from interviewing Hunter Albright recently that said, I've always wanted to be at Penn State, but now I have a brand new opportunity here and I couldn't pass it up. I'm glad that I get a second chance to, and it's that kind. And he told me his plans are to be there for the next 4 years. So Hunter Albright might not be a key contributor today. And the same thing for Sheffey, especially in a crowded, loaded running back room. But down the road, Albright is an offensive lineman. Sheffey as that you stay for 2, 3, 4 seasons. And those are the guys that are, above all else, really can set a program apart. If you can get the hometown talent to stay and then they develop long-term, and then they're the starters in that 4th or 5th season overall.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big question, though. Do they stay? Do they stick around and get that opportunity? We're in an era of college football where that's not normal anymore. That's really the rarity. So do they stay? Do they stick around? If they do, yeah, I agree with you. I think there's certainly a chance that they're going to have opportunities at some point. Right now, they're very low on the depth chart. That's clear as day, especially Sheffey at the running back position because Penn State, you bring 2 guys from the portal and you also have 2 of your own guys came back. So there's at least 4 guys ahead of him right now, if not more, plenty more. So
that's understandable as a true freshman.
Great. Absolutely. Very understandable. So, yeah, they have to work their way up. But, it's a great opportunity for both of them really to shine in a big way. Hunter Albright, especially, guy comes from St. Francis, and a local guy entirely. You go from Hollidaysburg to St. Francis to Penn State now. And Sheffey, same thing. Played 2 schools in Pennsylvania in high school, primarily State High, but and now gets a chance to play in his backyard here.
And Sheffey in particular, right? Not having an offer from Penn State for the longest time.
Right.
And then in the new year to start 2026, he gets that offer and immediately capitalizes on that. And it's the same thing with Hunter Albright. There is power. There is something to be said for guys that just want to be at Penn State for the sake of Penn State. Okay, whether it's just that it's home, it's close to family and friends, it's what you know best. But I'm kind of confused why. And maybe I don't know necessarily how it ultimately worked in those individual recruitments. So I don't necessarily want to speak for D'Antae Sheffey and Hunter Albright. But I'm just questioning why James Franklin wasn't doing the same thing. If these guys were so willing to commit for, look, take Hunter Albright, for example. He's still a preferred walk-on. He would have been that originally at Penn State. So I'm not understanding why there was no push by the previous coaching staff when Sheffey can play ball. Albright can play ball. Are they starters tomorrow? Not necessarily, but they're guys that are going to work. They're going to train. They have competed at the highest levels in high school football. And I mean, St. Francis was Division I. It's not like Hunter Albright's from an unknown Division II school, or that Sheffey. Let's not pretend like he wasn't deep in the Pennsylvania State playoffs with State High once upon a time.
Consistently, yeah.
Yeah. So these guys can play ball. I'm not sure why they weren't presented an opportunity or a strong opportunity to try to compete at Penn State originally.
I'll speak to Sheffey. I think the biggest thing with him, he was committed to Syracuse for a while, and that includes really through signing day. So when you're committed on signing day, it makes it that much more tougher for the coach, because in a lot of ways, they're busy trying to bring somebody else into that position. So absolutely can understand Sheffey a little bit more because of the fact that he was committed to Syracuse for a while. So I think that was a big part of it. Do you want to get your local guy in there? Sure. Has he played at the highest level? Absolutely. Has there been some inconsistencies? Yes. I think freshman year was incredible for Sheffey, over 1,700 yards. Sophomore year went down a little bit, and I thought that was a stage where I think a lot of defenses figured him out. A lot of coaches figured him out. He had to adjust, and then he transfers to Harrisburg, and just heads to Harrisburg, and ultimately has to compete with Messiah Mickens, which Mickens ultimately got the job. Sheffey wasn't able to play as much, so he came back to State High, finished his career strong, had a great senior year, first team All-State, 1,600 plus yards, and is a guy really that can play both sides of the ball, can do a lot of things. I think he showed patience at the running back level, I thought, which was phenomenal. And but from his perspective, I think he was committed to Syracuse for so long. It's hard for any recruit, whether it's Coach Campbell, whether it's James Franklin. It's hard to really go after a guy that is committed through signing day, and that was what D'Antae Sheffey was. So that makes it a little tougher. You are already deep at the running back position. You have holes at other positions. I think the same can be said for Hunter Albright, at least under James Franklin.
Still to come on this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, we talk more about Sheffey as a player. We also break down what Hunter Albright brings to the table for Penn State. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts that you want to apply. The boost will let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. And once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already, go check out the all-new Everydayer Club. As a member of the Everydayer Club for Locked On Nittany Lions, you will get access to an ad-free audio feed for this show compatible with Apple, Spotify, and every other major podcasting app. You will also get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You can go to lockedonnittanylions.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
Offensive line was pretty deep and talented for Penn State. Did they underachieve last year? Of course they did. I thought they played great down the stretch, but at the beginning of the year, I think they certainly did, especially with the veteran leadership they had. But they also had some depth on the O-line, so I think that was part of it too. You have other positions that you were trying to fill. I thought depth defensively was an issue.
Not enough spots to go around, right?
Yeah,
I guess that's
not
the
enough,
that's
not enough
the
spots.
Yeah,
not enough scholarships to go around either. So and you're going through the portal again. It's a different ballgame really when it comes to college football nowadays, and coaches have to take different approaches. And unfortunately, what comes with that, they along with the players have to be less patient now. So that's another part of it, really, when you're dealing with all of this. And look, again, from Sheffey's perspective, he was signed to Syracuse, so you figured, okay, we lost him. He's committed, and you move on. And he decommits, ultimately comes your way. But I can fully understand why James Franklin or even Matt Campbell early on didn't go after these guys.
I agree with your reasoning. I still default back to Penn State's Penn State. If you wanted to make it happen, you could have made it happen.
You could, but yeah.
There's the scholarship limits and everything else,
Yes.
right? You don't have as many opportunities for walk-ons. And if Syracuse is willing to dish out an offer and you're not, but that's okay. So that's kind of the line in the sand there, is that Syracuse offered, but James Franklin and Penn State never did at the time. I know circumstances are different. Your running back room looks a lot different with Matt Campbell starting over than with Singleton and Allen and Cam Wallace, right? And then you have Messiah Mickens coming in, a former teammate and everything. So I get that, but Sheffey was really good at State High. So let's talk about him more as a player, as opposed to, it's just something that's buzzing around in my mind as this guy was really good. He was right in your backyard. Why no offer until Matt Campbell takes over? That's just kind of why I wanted to throw it out there. But you've seen Sheffey in tons of games, so you can attest to where I'm coming from and saying this is a good ball player. He is somebody that you at least want in the room, and if he gets better and takes on a role down the road, this is why you make this move. I saw enough of Sheffey, whether it was online highlights or in the games themselves with the ones that I did attend for State High, that said, this guy has a future in Division I college football. Put it more into perspective for us, Jason.
I think the thing with Sheffey, though, again, you go back to his career. His freshman year, he was incredibly at over the 1,700 yards, and you thought everything was going to go great. Sophomore year, he struggled dramatically. Only had 400-plus yards, was injured at the end of the year. I was really struggled to get into space, really struggled with patience in a lot of ways. Then goes to Harrisburg and falls a little bit on the depth chart because of Mickens. So those 2 years, I think, probably affected his recruiting a little bit too. So, and then he comes back to State High and finishes his career strong and showed he's a Division I talent. Absolutely. I think there's also concerns about his size. I think that's one thing. You look at him, he's 5'9", 5'10" on a great day, and 185, 190 pounds. That's, in this era of college football, a little undersized. So I think that's another part of it. Again, the depth chart is certainly a huge part of it. Sheffey's a guy that's going to want to be a lot higher on that depth chart. He's going to have to work to get his way up at Penn State. But I think it's a player that is certainly, he's Division I talent. There's no question about it. There's a lot of still uncertainties with him. He's, the way he finished his career this year, had 100 yards in just about every game he played. So that was phenomenal. And if he can continue building that momentum, taking it to the college level, whether it's at Penn State or anywhere else, I think he'll be fine. But I think you're always going to have questions about a running back that isn't large sized. I think in a lot of ways, I'm not talking like a Craig Hayward or a Natron Means size. I'm talking, a guy that's over 6 feet and guy that just has that burst. And Sheffey's more patient of a running back, a little bit like a Le'Veon Bell. So I think that's part of it. But I saw enough this year. I think that he can be a Division I talent for certain. But there are still questions. There's still questions because of how his career went. The 4 years, if you add it all together, there's certainly going to be questions about him. But I'm happy for him, obviously, that he gets the opportunity, and happy that he finished his career strong and at State High. He went to Harrisburg. I don't know really the circumstance that got him there, but it didn't work out at Harrisburg, and came back to State High and finished his career strong.
Sheffey is definitely a finesse running back. I like his combination of speed, vision. For somebody that's listed, with him being listed around 180, 185 pounds, again, he's not going to start tomorrow. You get him in the weight room, you get him in the film room, and you have him learn behind capable guys that have done it for a few years with James Peoples, Carson Hansen, Quentin Martin. And then when they are graduated, they are moved on, that's when you're kind of hoping that someone like D'Antae Sheffey and then Hunter Albright at offensive line they have materialized over time, and they can take over, and you're not searching in the portal for somebody. These are guys that are willing to bide their time, hopefully, but that's what it's going. But the skill set is there for Sheffey to be that finesse kind of player. He's not a power back. He is somebody that
he can be, though. Even at his size, he can be. And I think that's one big part. He doesn't very rarely goes down first hit. He's a guy that
great balance.
Certainly great balance, great patience, can line up at receiver at times if you have to. You can get him into space. That's the case on a lot of running backs, I know, but you get him into space, he's very dangerous. And that's where you have to get creative with Sheffey. And that's what he learned from his sophomore year to now. I think sophomore year, he struggled dramatically trying to figure the vision, getting into space. He's now figured that out. And I think the way he finished his senior year, he showed that.
Let's talk about Hunter Albright. Hunter Albright played both sides because you have to, especially when you're the kind of caliber player that he was at Hollidaysburg. Yeah. And then he goes to St. Francis and said, well, St. Francis is now a Division III school. They were FCS Division I. He was still going up against high caliber talent. This is somebody that you want in Penn State's offensive line room. Again, long term. Okay, he's not going to start tomorrow. He's probably not going to start in a year's time. But as a redshirt freshman with 4 years of eligibility, who is listed at 6'5", and when I talk to him, he says he's 340 pounds. Hunter Albright is 340 pounds, and he can move very well. So that's something that's been a consistent all along. Whenever I've watched Albright in person or went back to check in on his highlights, Albright, who's always carried around 300 pounds as it was, just moves so well. You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know that he was that size. You would see the height. You would see the length. You'd see that this guy is towering over everybody. But it's the way that he moved that says, is he really 300 plus? There's no way. It's that combination of athleticism where refine the technique, and again, in a few years' time, he might be your starting guard by the time he's a redshirt junior.
Yeah, who knows? Right now, I think he's got a lot of progress to make. I think that's a big part of it. The biggest thing I remember from Hunter Albright and unfortunately, State High has that extra mid-Penn game now, so they really don't have the opportunity to play Hollidaysburg, at least these last couple of years. They've only had one out-of-conference game, and that's Williamsport when they play them. So the biggest thing I remember with him was defensively, how physical he was as a defensive tackle and how quick he was for his size, as you said, 340 pounds. Quick as he was for his size off the ball, he's able to get a lot of tackles for loss. And at the tackle position, I thought he was great. Offensive line, he was good, but I think he was a work in progress, and I think that's probably going to be the story right now with him. I think he's still going to be a little bit of a work in progress. So Who knows? Yeah, who knows if it at some point leads to a position change and he plays defensive tackle. They could have used him at tackle a couple times this year with the injuries that they certainly had. It could have used a lot of people, but I think to me the biggest thing I remember from him is how quick he was off the ball defensively with what he was able to do at the tackle position. But in the offensive line, he was a good player, but I think what you looked at him, I think he was a work in progress, and I think that's what you're going to see now with him. And
still to come on this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, we break down what Hunter Albright is going to bring to Penn State's offensive line for the future. We also talk about the overall trajectory of Matt Campbell and where he can take Penn State. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the guesswork or the stress. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect with them online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling all of it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. That's right, $150 all in if a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year. All you got to do is file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
And again, it's not fair for me to fully judge everything on him because, Sheffey, on the other hand, I saw week in and week out. Hunter Albright, I saw once. And
he's played a year of college ball.
Yeah, exactly. Beyond me seeing him the one time, I had to rely on tape and video every other time. So, yeah, you're going to see the highlights and not necessarily the lowlights when somebody's on video. So I think it's from Albright's perspective, I think to me he still has some work to do. But again, I didn't see him as much as I saw Sheffey.
No, but it still holds true to what we're saying here that with time, with proper coaching and all of it, nutrition, technique, everything, the coaching aspect of it. I like guys that have a ton of work ethic, that are willing to scrap on a day-to-day basis. Again, hearing it from Hunter Albright that he plans to stay at Penn State for 4 years. He plans to give it his all, and he's not coming in undersized. He's at 6'5", 340 pounds presently. So it's not to overhype Sheffey and Albright individually, but to offer perspective and say that these guys aren't premier prospects today, but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right. And they've got to have the attitude. I think that's the biggest thing, the attitude and patience that you may have the opportunity to play, because you're not going to initially at all. And I think I go back to, through the years of Pennsylvania high school football, I go back to the early 90s, 1991. Jason Killian was set the touchdown record at the running back position for Schuylkill Haven in Pennsylvania, and they were undefeated. They were state champions, and he came in at running back with the mentality, I'm going to beat out Kajana Carter. I'm going to beat out, other guys on that roster that you had absolutely no chance on the face of this earth of beating out initially. And he didn't have the patience. He ends up transferring, and I can't entirely, I want to say he might have gone to Kutztown. I can't entirely even remember where he went, but he didn't have the patience. He wanted to play running back. Joe Paterno wanted to move him to linebacker, and he left the school. That's these guys are going to have the patience. They're not going to be number one on the depth chart. They're not going to be number two, number three, maybe even number four. So they're certainly going to have to work their way up. And the biggest part is the attitude's got to be there. The patience has to be there. And we're in an era of college football where you may not see that. I think time will tell.
Overall trajectory here as we wrap up, Jason. I mean, if you're a Penn State fan, if you're a Penn State supporter in any capacity, I think if you're administration, I think if you're an alum, you're a former player, anything like that. If you're a podcast host covering Penn State on a day-to-day basis, you are optimistic. You are excited for the future of Penn
Sure.
State football, not only long term, because that's the idea that, oh, Matt Campbell is going to get Penn State to a national title, hopefully, okay? But so there are the long term, high end aspirations, but I think in the short term too, that most people immediately came away that had the 1,000-foot view. Penn State's 6-6, and this is just a middling Iowa State team that they're going to inherit. So how good are they going to be immediately right out of the gate? And you see the way too early rankings are released in Penn State's top 15. It's a favorable schedule in 2026, 2027. I'm not even going to get into that because that's every team looks so different. We're starting to get the idea of, okay, what is this opponent going to look like? That opponent. We know what Penn State is going to mostly look like, okay, as we sit here in late January. But above all else, there is nothing to be pessimistic about. That Matt Campbell is going to keep Penn State always competitive, but the idea is that you got to get over the obstacles. You got to beat Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon, whoever is that top two in the Big Ten Conference. You have to win games that you're not supposed to. You might have a down year from time to time. James Franklin did. It's not like he was 10-2 every single season. There were some bad seasons. There were some mediocre seasons that are just absolutely forgettable. And I'm not even talking about 2020. I'm talking about the season after that. I'm talking about this one we just had. Well, it was memorable for different reasons, right? Because he was fired. But Matt Campbell is a great game day coach. And there are question marks about James Franklin in that regard. We'll see how he is as a recruiter. James Franklin's proven himself to be a strong recruiter. What is Matt Campbell going to be now that he is at a premier institution, right? He had to recruit to Iowa State. That's tough to do. And now you have all the leverage of Penn State. So if you're a Penn State fan, you should at the very minimum be excited about where this program is headed, because it is going to be stabilized nevertheless.
Yeah, to your last point, I think he has more resources here, certainly, than he did at Iowa State. Got a bigger budget for certain than he did at Iowa State. So I think there's a lot of things in his favor. Look, the last time they hired a coach from Iowa State, I think he ended up all right. I
think he did. He did okay.
He's doing okay for another program here. But, yeah, certainly. I think there's I hate to use the cliche or big picture phrase, the great unknown. I think that's what there is right now with Matt Campbell coming here. I dare say they got lucky with the hire in the sense that the way the coaching search was going, and Matt Campbell was really, I think, when you look at it, a home run hire without question, based on name. We'll see what he can do now that he's here, and this year is going to be a lot different than you talked about 2027. That's certainly going to be different because he's going to be able to recruit a lot more. He's going to have a full season now to be able to recruit and not patch things together via the portal like he had to do this year. And you knew he was going to have to do that. So, there's going to be differences there. But I think you have to be very excited if you're Penn State, not just because of the schedule. Yes, it's a very favorable schedule. You don't play Ohio State, you don't play Oregon, you don't play Indiana. It's certainly going to be a favorable schedule. You got some tough games in there still, but I think there's no doubt that you have to be very excited for what the future of Penn State holds. You have to be excited that, number one, Terry Smith's still on staff. He's got the respect of a lot of players. Probably kept some guys here that were able to stick around.
He's just as important to the equation as Matt Campbell is.
Yeah, able to stick around, able to, and a lot of the players came back because of that. Did players enter the portal? Of course. There's no question about that. And they were recruited by James Franklin. They went back to James Franklin. That's understandable entirely. So I think there's overall trajectory. You got to be very excited if you're a Penn State fan. You have to be very happy for what lies ahead. And again, I think it's unknown right now to what you're going to see. We start to slowly find out about it as the months go on here. But I think the job Matt Campbell's done since he's come here from day one has been great so far. You knew he had to hit the portal as much as he did, and he was able to bring a lot of his own guys. He's bringing local guys, as we just talked about, and he's been able to get a few transfers, especially in the defensive line, that I think are going to help this team dramatically.
And that is where we are going. We are going to wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Great show as always. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around all of your favorite Penn State sports teams. My name is Zach Seyko, your host every single day. He is Jason Lord, special guest on today's show to give the local high school perspective, but he's been covering Penn State football a ton. He was my counterpart on local ESPN radio shows once upon a time. So, Jason, it's great to get back to doing something we did a few years ago, which seems so far away, but actually not too long ago. And I'm glad we got to have this conversation today. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the perspective and can't wait to have you back on the show very soon.
Anytime, Zach. Thanks for having me.